It's just a phenomenal movie. It's brilliantly written. It's so well constructed as a story. Excellent characters. Highly engaging. It's full of energy. Brilliantly written. Sophisticated. Educated. Dealing with really profound concepts that make you seriously question the reality of your existence. Cinema has always been extremely important to me. I've always loved movies. If you've seen any of my other videos, you probably know just how obsessed I am with films and movies in general. I don't know what the difference between film and movie is, by the way. I always just thought movies were like a blockbuster popcorn idea and films were something more serious. Probably not important at all. I first got to go to the cinema when I was 5 years old. I wish I could say that it was Star Wars, the first movie I saw. Star Wars came out in 1977. I was 5 years old in 1978. Star Wars was the year before that, and I didn't get to see it at the cinema on its first release. But I did get to see a very cool movie for my first movie at the cinema. It was Superman 1, starring Christopher Reeve, Richard Donner directing. Really excellent film. And it had a massive impact on me, especially the music. It was the music, I think, that hit me the most. I love the John Williams score. It was so vibrant, so alive, so full of energy, inspiring, so optimistic, bigger, brighter and better than any experience I'd had up until that point, at least that I could remember. I was blown away. I came out of the cinema just completely stunned. And it was sort of like I was on a different vibe or a different wavelength for what seemed like a week afterwards. So that was my first cinema experience. I actually thought the coolest part of the movie was right at the beginning, the whole Krypton thing. It just looked fantastic, and the whole Marlon Brando as Superman's dad, I thought that was an epic choice, really grand status. Some of the language actually used in Superman 1 is really quite lofty. There's some sophistication there. One of the lines that stuck in my head was where Superman, Kal-El, is a baby travelling in that Star Crystal 1 baby spaceship on his way to Earth, from Krypton to Earth, after Krypton is destroyed. Superman listens, or Kal-El listens to his father, who's kind of educating him on various matters. And he says, over the next few years, this is Marlon Brando speaking, I won't try and impersonate him because I can't do a reasonable impression or impersonation. Over the next few years, we shall examine the basic precepts of immortality and its basis in actual fact, which I thought was very cool. Even as a little kid, I thought, whoa, immortality. I thought, wow, I kind of got the idea Superman is immortal, right? But watching the film, he does grow up from a baby kid who lifts up the car, and then he's like a high school kid who can run as fast as the train, and then later on, he's a fully grown man flying around the world, solving big problems. But clearly he was getting older and older. I kind of thought, even as a little kid, it's like, okay, he's going to become an old man. Superman is eventually going to get old. And I was aware of this even at the age of 5, which is quite funny. Because I saw Superman's dad, quite old. So Superman will end up like that, and eventually he will die, right? Immortality. If his father knows about immortality and dies on Krypton, and Superman's going to get old and die, is immortality a fact? This was always something that was in the back of my mind as a kid. Now, throughout my childhood, I didn't get to see a lot of films at the cinema. I was lucky enough to see the Star Wars trilogy, A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, back-to-back in about 1985 when they were released. But I never got to see any of those films at the cinema for the first time, like some of my friends did. I was obsessed with Star Wars as a kid. I had a big Star Wars figure collection, but I never had a Millennium Falcon. I never had one. My parents always said, no, Neil, that's too expensive. Okay, most of my friends didn't have a Millennium Falcon either. One or two of my richer friends did. One friend in particular, he had all the Star Wars toys, including the original TIE Fighter and Death Star cardboard playset, which I thought was extremely cool. But I was lucky enough to have at least a very big Star Wars figure collection. And I even had 6 Stormtroopers. Wow, yeah, amazing, eh? Happy memories. The obsession with Star Wars was, of course, because of the movies. I learned the movies word for word, verbatim, so I could quote them. As I went up through my teens, I didn't go to the cinema that often. Videos were the thing at the time, and I was a big fan of the Arnold Schwarzenegger movies. Big 2 favourites were Highlander and Back to the Future, and I became totally obsessed with those two movies, and that obsession lasted a long time. All the way through college, I was known as the guy who quoted Highlander and Back to the Future. Quoting has become a more big thing now, it's become much more mainstream, but back then, it was almost unheard of. I didn't know anybody other than my buddy who quoted, and had this obsession with quoting. His big obsession were Weird Science, which you may or may not have heard of. I think it's a John Hughes film. Yeah, it's a John Hughes film. And Highlander. We had that in common. So we were known as like the jokers in the college and the Joker quota guys till maybe 1990 when Total Recall came along, Arnold Schwarzenegger film. I just thought that was the coolest thing in the world. And I thought Sharon Stone was the most, wow, amazing woman in existence. Quite amusing. I was maybe 19 at the time. So that had a very big impact on me. I actually thought Arnold Schwarzenegger was a very good actor. I think it's probably his best performance, to be fair. It's like winning an Oscar, as if I would know. That's what he said at one of his speeches. But then in my 20s, I guess I got caught up in having to do a job and make money, and movies became sort of like even more important to me. And I would always go to the cinema at least twice a week, usually on a Friday and Saturday, with different friends, and sometimes alone. I got into a habit, actually when I was in college, of using my free afternoon, when I should have been in the library studying, to go to the cinema and watch movies. You'd think I would have had some kind of career in movies because I was just so obsessed with them. But no, that never happened. Just saw lots and lots and lots of films. And my favourites included ones like Braveheart. That was a really big one for me. Loved Braveheart. Romeo and Juliet. I thought the Baz Luhrmann Romeo and Juliet, I thought that was really good. All the honourable mentions like Carlito's Way. I don't usually like that kind of film. I think Scarface is really good, but I wasn't a big fan of, say, the Godfather films, which I know are hugely, hugely popular. But for some reason, Carlito's Way, it rung a bell. Very, very cool. Later on, Starship Troopers, I thought that was wild. Really great film, really enjoyable. And I watch that even now, it makes me feel better. Towards the end of the 90s were, to me, some of the best movies ever made. The ones about higher level thinking, higher level realities. And the ones that stick in my head the most strongly were movies like Dark City, where you start to question the reality you're living in. Is it real or is it artificial? The Truman Show, even more extreme on that particular subject. Because it looks like normal life, the Truman Show, and yet he's in a very artificial world that's not real at all. It sounds like a totally different kind of film. Revolver, very high-level awareness, where you start to question the reality of your subjective existence. But the big one, of course, The Matrix. To me, The Matrix is just a phenomenal movie. Phenomenal for several reasons. It's brilliantly written. It's so well constructed as a story. Excellent characters, highly engaging, it's full of energy, it's brilliantly written, the dialogue is really quite lofty, sophisticated, educated, and it's dealing with really profound concepts that make you seriously question the reality of your existence. So I was a huge fan of The Matrix. In the years that followed, though, I became, I guess, more mainstream. I got interested in like the Spider-Man movies and the X-Men movies. I remember watching 300 and Sin City at the cinema. I thought, these are really cool. You know, I was never a huge fan of the James Bond films. And I'm of the Daniel Craig movies, and I sort of gave them a go. I did enjoy Casino Royale. I enjoyed Quantum of Solace. I thought Skyfall was amazing. I really did. When I went to see Skyfall, I was blown away by it. And I had this kind of childish habit of, if I really liked a movie, I would see if I can get an applause going, get everybody clapping in the cinema. I'd done this when I was younger. You know, it's like, sometimes it was very, I think it was because of Rocky IV. It was a wild experience. It was like back in 1987, and the cinema was so full. They just let more and more people on, and they were sitting on the stairs in the aisles between the seats, and they had people sitting down cross-legged like children at the front, in front of the seats. They got as many people in there as possible. And while we were watching the big fights in the Rocky film, the fight sequences, everyone was cheering. Now, as the credits went up at the end, everybody went quiet. And I thought, no, I'm still in the zone. And I stood up and I started clapping, and everybody joined in. And it became, and it was like being part of the crowd. It was wonderful. And I can remember another time when I saw Harry Potter Chamber of Secrets. Now, at that time, I was in my 20s, and my friends had grown up, so they wouldn't come with me. And I went to see it, and it was like Christmas Eve. And at the end, I really, really enjoyed it, and it made me feel like a kid again. So I actually stood up and started applauding, and everybody joined in. And it was wonderful, and it felt great. Anyway, getting back to Skyfall, I stood up, I was at the front, just with one of my buddies, and I thought that was brilliant, it deserves an applause. I hadn't applauded in the cinema actually since Superman Returns, and that wasn't me, no. At the end of Superman Returns, some other people stood up, like a family, and they just started applauding, and everybody joined in, and it was a nice moment. That wasn't one of my big favourites, but I like this when this happens. So everyone can show that they really enjoyed it, and everybody else knows they really enjoyed it, instead of, stiff upper lip, British, quietly file out and go back home, or to wherever you're going. So I tried this with Skyfall. Tried to applause. Nothing. I was like the weirdo in the front row, and I was clapping away. Nobody was joining me. My buddy was too scared to join in. I don't know if he felt the same, but I think he did because he was a big Bond fan anyway. But nothing at all. And that was 2012, I think it was. That was the last time I applauded in a cinema. Because in 2013 I went to China. I mean, I could have tried to get an applause going, but I didn't. Mainly because my girlfriend, stroke wife, she didn't like people drawing attention. That would not have gone down well with her. It would have probably frightened her, to be honest. So I got out of the habit of I became smaller than life. That's a whole nother subject. But when I was in China, for the first few years, I had like lots of social contact, parties, restaurants, all kinds of things going on. But as I was there over a period of time, there were fewer and fewer foreigners there, and I was living a more quiet, gradually more isolated life. And so the cinema became progressively more important. And highlights included Interstellar, Gravity, and Spectre, the other James Bond film that followed Skyfall. And these were major highlights. They made me feel great. You know this feeling you get when you come out of seeing a great film? You're sort of much more in the moment, and it's sort of like reality is like in high definition. Everything looks, feels more alive, more vibrant, more energized, and you feel more alive and more energized. And it's a vibe that stays with you for quite some time, or at least it did with me. So I've kind of felt these were life-affirming experiences. So cinema was very, very important. Now I'm back in England. I actually have not been to the cinema yet, and I didn't miss my chance to see Die Another Day and June, which I'm hoping to catch up with. It's something I would definitely like to get back into, watching movies on the big screen at the cinema. Let's hope I do that soon. Hi everyone, my name is Neil Carpenter. I am the computer games developer who made Lord Temmin's Fortress. You can see the description below. If you like this video, please subscribe or like. Thank you. Have a great day.